What internet marketing expert should you spend your valuable time listening to? Listen to someone who has over 20 years of web marketing experience and hundreds of website marketing success stories. That man is Aaron Sparks from Site Strategics. And this is Edge of the Web Radio.
All right, digging into it. Got a couple minutes here. I want to go quickly into this news information. This happened this past week. The FCC passed strict net neutrality regulations on a 3-2 vote. As expected, the Federal Communications Commission passed new net neutrality regulations this week with two Democratic appointee commissioners joining the chairman, Tom Wheeler, in voting yes. Now, what net neutrality is, briefly, is the regulation that is now going to be applied, although I'm sure there's going to be an appeal process going on, basically restricting any provider of internet bandwidth to throttle back or to slow down speeds to certain types of websites, and on top of that, possibly also raise traffic costs or bandwidth costs to facilitate access to said websites. There's a big discussion in this space, and briefly, we'll probably want to jump into this a little bit later in the show, but briefly, some key concepts here. This is a very big regulation change, and the government's stepping in and actually telling companies to cap. They can't overcharge for or charge in accordance to use, Doug. Yeah. They can't charge in accordance to use. That seems to me a pretty big reach into the private sector, and at that point in time, it's going to take the trappings of what do I want to say? It's going to take the trappings of possible price restrictions, possible dampening of certain types of businesses, and with that type of regulation, there's a very large slippery slope to go down if the private network that has been built over the last 10 years now gets regulated just like power or just like the highways. Yeah. We talked about this actually in show 77. I actually went back and actually had a look at what we talked about then, and I certainly want to talk a little bit more about that now. But Doug, give me a key thought about what this means to the online traffic, the consumer as well as the business.
Well, the two scenarios that I heard that were good. So Mark Cuban put out one scenario, and he basically said, so imagine that Netflix is not able to reprioritize its traffic, and so every consumer basically starts to see skips and has a hard time watching a video online, and that's where TV is moving, right? TV is definitely moving online to on demand and stuff. So that's the one scenario, is that it could ruin the experience for all of us if because a bit, as he puts it, a bit is a bit. It doesn't matter whether it's in a text file or whether it's in a video. If you're going to make all of them move at the same speed, then you could slow down the experience for everybody. Right. That's one scenario. But the scenario that I think of is imagine it this way. Imagine that you're a small employer, and you built this beautiful store. You found the right spot, a great street, it's got lots of traffic and everything else, but then Best Buy moved on one side of you, right, and then Sears moved on the other side of you and blocked the street, and nobody could make it to your store anymore. Is that fair? And so those are the kind of the two scenarios that I look at, is that if Comcast, if these guys that operate the pipelines start to say, okay, well, we're going to give you faster traffic than you, then what do guys like you and me do? Right. What do we do with our small business that we've grown for 10 years, invested our life savings in, everything else, and all of a sudden if you want people to actually see your site and see it fast, you're going to have to pay us, $1,000 a month or something. Right. And those are those two scenarios that I kind of look at that make this a confusing thing. I'm anti-federal government. Absolutely. If the federal government touches it, it's probably going to break. But I think that in this case, if they do break it, the screams and howls from both business and consumer
Right.
heads are going to roll.
Ted Cruz actually called this the Obamacare for the internet, and rightfully so. There's a lot of controlling factors here, and it's coming from a legacy piece of information, regulation that comes from the 1930s,
right,
for the telephony environment. Yeah. It has all the trappings of...
Well, and if it works as good as our utilities now...
All right. This has to be a conversation here very soon in the near future, but take a look at these rulings, because you know what? It absolutely does affect your online experience, and you need to be, as a citizen of the country, need to be aware of what your government's doing right now. All right. Hey, jumping into it.